What if the history you learned in school is missing its first chapter? Genesis 1:1 opens with creation, but ancient texts from Mesopotamia suggest something came before. The Sumerians, writing in cuneiform on clay tablets 5,000 years ago, recorded a world that scholars today struggle to explain. Most people assume human history begins with agriculture and the first cities, but the Sumerian royal list challenges that assumption completely. In this exploration, we will move through 3 revealing stages. First, we will examine what these ancient records actually say. Then, we will ask why these accounts have been dismissed as mythology. And finally, we will discover what changes when we take these texts seriously. And once we understand this first layer, the real story begins. The Sumerian royal list is not a legend passed down through oral tradition. It is a physical document, inscribed on clay, cataloging rulers who governed before the flood. These were not symbolic figures. The scribes recorded their names, their cities, and the lengths of their reigns with the same precision they used for grain inventories and tax records. Alolim of Eridu reigned for 28,000 years. Anola ruled for 36,000 years. Enmenluana governed for 43,000 years. These numbers are not typos. They appear consistently across multiple copies of the list, spanning centuries of Sumerian civilization. Scholars today call this mythology. They argue these numbers are symbolic, representing power or divine favor rather than actual years. But the Sumerians themselves made no such distinction. They recorded these kings alongside later rulers whose reigns lasted realistic human lifespans. The list transitions seamlessly from pre-flood kings who ruled for millennia to post-flood kings who ruled for decades. If the long reigns were purely symbolic, why would the scribes suddenly switch to realistic numbers without any textual indication of a change in recording method? This raises an uncomfortable question. What if the Sumerians were recording something real, but something we no longer have the framework to understand? The Bible itself hints at extraordinary lifespans. Genesis 5 records that Methuselah lived 969 years. Adam lived 930 years. Noah was 600 years old when the flood came. Ancient Jewish and Christian scholars debated whether these ages were literal or symbolic, but the text itself presents them straightforward biographical facts. The connection between biblical patriarchs and Sumerian kings runs deeper than just long lifespans. Both traditions place these extraordinary beings before a catastrophic flood that resets human civilization. Both suggest that the pre-flood world operated under different rules than our own. Both preserve the memory of a time when heaven and earth were not as separated as they are now. Subscribe now to uncover more hidden biblical truths that mainstream scholarship overlooks. But here is where the mystery deepens. The Sumerian kings are never described as fully human. The texts use specific terms that modern translations render as king, but the original Sumerian words carry different connotations. Lugla means great man or big man, but it often appears alongside divine determinatives. Symbols indicating the name refers to a deity or semi-divine being. These rulers exist in a category between human and God, between earth and heaven. Ancient Mesopotamian religion recognized multiple classes of beings. At the top were the great gods like An, Enlil, and Enki, who shaped reality itself. Below them were the Anunnaki, divine administrators who governed specific aspects of the cosmos. Then came the Agigi, lesser deities who performed labor. And at the bottom were humans created to serve the gods. But the kings of the royal list do not fit neatly into any of these categories. They rule cities on earth, but they live for tens of thousands of years. They bear names that sound human, but they wield power that seems divine. This ambiguity is not a bug in the Sumerian worldview. It is a feature. The ancient Near East did not draw hard boundaries between categories the way we do. Gods could become human. Humans could become gods. The divine and the material interpenetrated constantly. When we try to force these texts into our modern categories of myth versus history, supernatural versus natural, we miss what the Sumerians were actually communicating. They were describing a world where the rules were different, not metaphorically different, actually different. a world where beings existed who were not quite human and not quite divine. A world where time moved differently, where lifespans stretched across millennia, where the boundary between heaven and earth was thin enough to cross. Like this video, if you are beginning to see the pattern, the royal list ends with a single line: the flood swept over the earth. After this, the kingship descends from heaven again, but the rulers now have human lifespans. Etarna of Kish reigned for 1,500 years, still extraordinary by our standards, but a sharp drop from the 40,000-year reigns before the flood. With each generation, the numbers decrease. By the time we reach the historical kings, we can verify through archaeology the reigns last 20 or 30 years, just like modern heads of state. What happened? Why did the rules change? The Sumerian scribes do not explain. They simply record the transition as a fact. The flood came. The old world ended. A new world began, operating under different principles. This pattern appears in cultures around the world. The Greeks remembered a golden age when heroes walked the earth. Norse mythology speaks of a time before the current world, when giants and gods battled for supremacy. Hindu texts describe cycles of creation and destruction, with ages when humans lived for thousands of years. Even the Bible preserves this pattern. After the flood, Genesis 11 records rapidly decreasing lifespans. Noah's son Shem lived 600 years. Shem's descendants lived 400 years, then 200, then less than 200. By the time we reach Abraham, lifespans have stabilized at around 175 years. By the time of Moses, Psalm 90:10 states that human life lasts 70 years, or 80 for the strong. The same trajectory as the Sumerian royal list. Modern science cannot explain this pattern. If these texts are pure fiction, why do cultures separated by thousands of miles preserve the same narrative arc? Why do scribes recording grain harvests and military campaigns suddenly start lying when they write about their own history? The standard explanation is that ancient people simply did not distinguish between history and mythology. But this explanation assumes ancient people were intellectually primitive, unable to tell the difference between a story and a record. The evidence suggests otherwise. Sumerian scribes were meticulous. They developed one of the first writing systems precisely to keep accurate records. They invented mathematics to track commerce and astronomy. They created literature that explores complex moral and philosophical questions. These were not simple-minded people who confused fantasy with reality. When they recorded kings who reigned for 28,000 years, they had a reason, and that reason might be simpler than we think. They were recording what happened, not symbolically, not mythologically, actually, and the fact that we cannot fit their records into our modern worldview says more about the limits of our understanding than about the reliability of their testimony. Comment below, do you believe the Sumerian royal list records real history or symbolic mythology? But if we take the Sumerian texts at face value, we must ask a more disturbing question. Who were these kings? What kind of beings could live for tens of thousands of years and rule over cities? The texts themselves provide clues. These rulers are associated with specific cities, each with its own patron deity. Eridu, the first city, belonged to Enki, god of wisdom and fresh water. Batabira was under the protection of Dumuzi, god of shepherds. The cities were not just administrative centers. They were sacred spaces where heaven touched earth. The kings themselves seem to function as intermediaries. They are not quite gods, but they are not quite human either. They bridge the gap, ruling on earth while maintaining connection to the divine realm. This role becomes clearer when we examine what happens after the flood. The new kings are still chosen by the gods, but they are fully human. They age and die like ordinary people. The direct connection to the divine realm has been severed. Something was lost in the flood, and humanity has been trying to rebuild it ever since. Yet the question remains, if these pre-flood kings were real, where is the archaeological evidence? We have found Sumerian cities. We have excavated temples and palaces. We have uncovered thousands of cuneiform tablets, but we have found no skeletal remains of beings who lived for 28,000 years. No artifacts that suggest a civilization older than the one we already know about. The Sumerians appear suddenly in the archaeological record. already possessing writing, mathematics, and complex social organization. Scholars call this the Sumerian problem. And maybe that is the point. Maybe the evidence is not missing. Maybe we are looking in the wrong place. The Sumerians themselves tell us that the flood destroyed the old world. If that is true, the evidence lies buried beneath layers of sediment beyond the reach of conventional archaeology. Or perhaps the evidence exists in a form we do not yet recognize. The texts are the evidence. The myths are the evidence. The consistent testimony of ancient cultures around the world is the evidence. We have been trained to dismiss these sources as unreliable. But what if our training is the problem? The Sumerian royal list is not asking us to believe blindly. It is asking us to consider the possibility that history is longer and stranger than we have been taught. It is asking us to take the testimony of ancient witnesses seriously. And it is asking us to wonder what else might be hidden in the texts we have labeled as mythology. And what we discover next will challenge everything we thought we knew about the origins of civilization. Chapter 2. The Wise Ones of Yore, Rulers Beyond Human Understanding. The Sumerian texts do not just list names and numbers. They give these ancient rulers a title that modern translations struggle to capture. The term Apkallu appears throughout Mesopotamian literature, referring to sages who brought civilization to humanity. Scholars translate this as wise one or sage, but the Sumerian concept is far more specific. The Apkallu were 7 beings who appeared before the flood, teaching humanity the arts of civilization. They were not human teachers. According to the texts, they came from the Abzu, the primordial freshwater ocean beneath the earth, sent by Enki to guide humanity. They taught writing, mathematics, agriculture, temple building, and the proper rituals to maintain order in the cosmos. Berosus, a Babylonian priest writing in the 3rd century BC, preserved detailed accounts of these beings. He called them by the Greek name Oannes and described them as amphibious creatures covered in scales with the heads of men and the bodies of fish. During the day, they emerged from the sea to teach humans. At night, they returned to the water. They ate no food. They spoke with human voices. They gave humanity everything needed to build civilization, then disappeared before the flood. Modern scholars dismiss Berosus as recording mythology, but ancient historians like Josephus and Eusebius quoted him as a reliable historical source. The consistency of his account with earlier Sumerian texts suggests he was preserving genuine tradition, not inventing stories. The Apkallu were remembered as real beings who physically appeared and interacted with early humans. They were not gods. They were messengers, intermediaries, agents of the divine realm operating in the material world. This concept finds echoes in biblical text. Genesis 6:4 mentions the Nephilim, giants who walked the earth before the flood. The verse states, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them." Who were the sons of God? Jewish tradition, preserved in texts like 1 Enoch, identifies them as fallen angels who descended to earth and taught humanity forbidden knowledge. They taught metallurgy, cosmetics, weaponry, astrology, and sorcery. They took human wives and fathered hybrid offspring. The parallels are striking. Both traditions describe non-human beings who descend before the flood. Both teach humanity advanced knowledge. Both are associated with a corruption that leads to divine judgment. The Bible condemns the actions of the sons of God, while Sumerian texts venerate the Apkallu as beneficial. But the underlying narrative structure is identical. Beings from the divine realm cross into the human world and change the course of history. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this truth. The Apkallu were not abstract spiritual forces. They had names. Adapa, the first of the 7, was created by Enki as a prototype for humanity. He was given wisdom but denied immortality. A surviving text describes how Adapa broke the wings of the south wind and was summoned before the god Anu to answer for his actions. Enki warned Adapa not to eat or drink anything offered in heaven, fearing it would be poison. But Anu, impressed by Adapa's wisdom, offered him the bread and water of life, which would have granted immortality. Adapa refused, following Enki's instructions, and lost his chance at eternal life. This story reveals the complex politics of the divine realm. Enki, who created Adapa, intentionally withholds full divinity from him. Anu, the sky god, is willing to grant immortality, but is prevented by Enki's dissection. Adapa, caught in the middle, loses out because of a miscommunication between the gods. The narrative structure mirrors the Garden of Eden, where humanity is offered a path to godhood through the tree of knowledge, but is punished for taking it. In both stories, humans come close to divinity but are ultimately kept in a subordinate position. The other 6 Apkadu each have their own stories, though many texts are lost or fragmentary. Uanduga served under the second pre-flood king. Enmeduga served under the third. Enmegalama served under the fourth. Enmebaluga served under the fifth. Anenlilda served under the sixth. Utwabzu served under the seventh. Each sage was associated with a specific city and a specific king, suggesting a structured system of divine oversight over early human civilization. These were not random appearances, they were part of a coordinated plan. Later Mesopotamian tradition describes post-flood sages who were fully human but possessed extraordinary wisdom, continuing the work of the original 7 Apkallu. This suggests the transfer of knowledge from the divine beings to human lineages. The wisdom did not disappear with the flood. It was preserved and passed down, though in a diminished form. Humanity was meant to continue the project the Apkallu started, even without their direct presence. Biblical tradition preserves a similar concept. Enoch, the 7th generation from Adam, walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Enoch did not die. He was taken directly into heaven where, according to later Jewish texts, he was transformed into the angel Metatron and given knowledge of all divine mysteries. He became a scribe in heaven, recording the deeds of humanity and the workings of the cosmos. Like the Apkallu, Enoch serves as an intermediary, a human who ascends to the divine realm and brings back knowledge. Subscribe for more revelations that connect ancient texts with biblical truth. The role of these intermediary figures is crucial. They suggest that the relationship between heaven and earth and the ancient world was not as distant as it is now. The divine realm was accessible. Beings could cross the boundary in both directions. Humans could ascend. Divine beings could descend. The separation we take for granted today was not always the norm. But this accessibility came with danger. If the boundary between heaven and earth is too permeable, chaos results. Beings from one realm interfere with the other. Humans gain knowledge they are not ready to handle. Divine beings become entangled in material concerns. The order of creation breaks down. This is precisely what Genesis 6 describes as happening before the flood. The sons of God saw that human women were beautiful and took them as wives. The result was the Nephilim, beings who disrupted the natural order so severely that God decided to wipe the earth clean and start over. The Sumerian version is less explicit about moral judgment, but it implies the same problem. The pre-flood world became corrupt. The gods decided to send a flood to destroy humanity. Only one man, Zusudra in Sumerian or Atrahasis in Akkadian, was warned by Enki and built a boat to survive. After the flood, the gods imposed new rules. The direct presence of divine beings on earth was reduced. Humanity was left to govern itself, with only occasional divine intervention. This raises a profound theological question. Why would God, or the gods, create a system that required such drastic correction? If the pre-flood world was so corrupted by the presence of divine beings among humans, why allow it in the first place? The Sumerian texts suggest an answer. The world was an experiment. The gods were trying to establish a functional relationship between the divine and material realms. The first attempt failed. The flood was not punishment so much as a reset, an opportunity to try again with new parameters. The Bible frames it differently, emphasizing divine judgment against human wickedness. But even in Genesis, God expresses something like regret. Genesis 6 thus says, "The Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart." This is not the statement of a distant, unchanging deity. This is a God who is emotionally involved in the project of creation, who feels pain when it goes wrong. The flood is not cold justice. It is a sorrowful necessity, and this is where the Sumerian and biblical accounts converge most powerfully. Both describe a god or gods who cared deeply about the outcome of human history. Both describe a world where the divine and human realms are meant to interact, but where that interaction can go terribly wrong. Both describe a catastrophe that reshapes reality and sets the stage for a new beginning. But what kind of world existed before the flood? What did it look like when divine beings walked openly on earth and humans lived for thousands of years? The texts give us fragments, tantalizing glimpses, but never a complete picture. We know there were cities, we know there were kings, we know there were advanced knowledge, but what was daily life like? How did ordinary people experience a world where the Apkallu taught in the streets and the gods governed from their temples? The answer may be simpler than we expect. It was a world of order. The Sumerians were obsessed with order. Every aspect of their society was carefully structured. Priests performed rituals at precise times to maintain cosmic balance. Kings administered justice according to divine law. Farmers planted and harvested according to sacred calendars. The entire civilization functioned as a machine designed to keep chaos at bay. And this obsession with order was not arbitrary. It was a response to the memory of what happens when order breaks down. The flood was not just water, it was the return of chaos. The Sumerian creation myth describes the primordial state as a mixture of fresh water and salt water, Apsu and Tiamat, existing in undifferentiated unity. Creation began when these waters were separated, when boundaries were established, when order emerged from chaos. The flood reversed this process. The boundaries collapsed. The waters mixed again. Order dissolved back into chaos. And when the waters receded, the world had to be created anew. This is why the post-flood kings have human lifespans. This is why the Apkallu do not return. This is why humanity must now maintain order without direct divine supervision. The experiment changed, the parameters shifted, and the world we know today is the result of that shift. But the memory of the old world persists, and that memory is dangerous. Chapter 3. The Enuma Elish, when chaos birthed order, before there were kings, before there were cities, before there was humanity, there was a war. The Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, opens with a startling image. When on high the heaven had not been named, firm ground below had not been called by name, naught but primordial Apsu, their begetter, and Mummu Tiamat, she who bore them all, their waters commingling as a single body. This is not creation from nothing. This is creation from something. Two primordial entities, Apsu the freshwater and Tiamat the saltwater, exist in an undifferentiated state. They are not yet separate. They are not yet named. They are potential, not actuality. From this union, the first gods are born, not created. Born. They emerge from the mixing of waters like children from a womb, and immediately they cause problems. The young gods are noisy. They disturb the rest of Apsu and Tiamat. Apsu complains, "Their ways are loathsome unto me. By day I find no relief, nor repose by night. I will destroy, I will wreck their ways that quiet may be restored." Apsu intends to kill his own offspring to restore peace. But Ea, the Sumerian Enki, god of wisdom, discovers the plot. He recites a spell that puts Apsu into a deep sleep, then kills him and establishes his dwelling upon Apsu's corpse. This act of patricide sets the entire cosmos in motion. Tiamat, enraged by the murder of her consort, raises an army of monsters to avenge him. She creates 11 types of terrifying creatures, serpents and dragons and scorpion men, and appoints Kumnu, one of the younger gods, as their leader. The gods are terrified. None of them can face Tiamat. Finally, Marduk, the son of Ea, agrees to fight her, but only if the other gods grant him supreme authority. They agree. Marduk faces Tiamat in single combat. He casts a net to entangle her, drives a wind into her mouth so she cannot close it, and shoots an arrow through her open jaws that pierces her heart. With Tiamat dead, Marduk splits her body in half. From one half, he creates the sky. From the other half, he creates the sky. From the other half, he creates the earth. He organizes the cosmos, assigning positions to the stars and establishing the calendar. This is not the God of Genesis speaking light into existence. This is violent, physical, contested creation. Order does not emerge peacefully. It is won through battle. The cosmos is not a gift. It is a conquest, and the implications of this difference are staggering. Like this video if you are seeing how deep this really goes. The Enuma Elish presents creation as the establishment of hierarchy through violence. Marduk becomes king of the gods, not because he is the first or the most ancient, but because he is the strongest. He defeats chaos and imposes order. But this order is fragile. It must be constantly maintained. The gods must perform their functions. Humanity must perform the rituals. If these duties are neglected, chaos will return. Tiamat is dead, but the potential for chaos remains. This worldview is fundamentally different from the biblical perspective. Genesis 1 describes God creating through speech. Let there be light, and there is light. No struggle, no opposition, no pre-existing material to wrestle into shape. God is absolute, unchallenged, sovereign. The cosmos is orderly because God wills it to be orderly, not because God fought to make it so. Yet even in Genesis, traces of an older narrative remain. Genesis 1:2 describes the earth as without form and void, with darkness over the face of the deep. The Hebrew word for the deep is Tehom, which is linguistically related to Tiamat. Some scholars argue this is not coincidence. They suggest Genesis 1 is deliberately revising the Mesopotamian creation story, replacing the violent cosmic battle with the peaceful command of a single sovereign God. The chaos is still there in the background, but it is passive, not active. It does not resist God's creative word. Psalm 74,013 or 14 offers a more explicit connection. You divided the sea by your might. You broke the heads of the dragons in the waters. You crushed the heads of Leviathan. Leviathan is a sea monster, often associated with chaos. The psalm describes God defeating this creature as part of the act of creation. Similarly, Isaiah 27:1 looks forward to a future day when the Lord with his hard and great and strong sword will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan the twisting serpent, and he will slay the dragon that is in the sea. These passages suggest that the biblical authors were aware of the cosmic battle myth and reinterpreted it. God does not struggle against Leviathan. God defeats Leviathan effortlessly. The battle is not a contest between equals. It is the Creator subduing rebellious creation. But the narrative structure remains. Creation involves the defeat of chaos, the establishment of order over disorder. The Enuma Elish also explains why humanity exists. After defeating Tiamat, the gods grow tired of maintaining the cosmos themselves. They complain about the labor. Marduk proposes a solution. He will create humanity to serve the gods, freeing them from toil. He asks which of the gods instigated Tiamat's rebellion. They name King Mu. Marduk kills King Mu, and from his blood, Ea creates humanity. Let him be charged with the service of the gods, that they may be at ease. Humanity is created from the blood of a rebellious god. We are born from violence. Our purpose is servitude. This is a dark vision, yet the Mesopotamians did not see it as dark. They saw it as noble. Humanity has a function in the cosmic order. We are necessary. Without us, the gods themselves would suffer. Our rituals and sacrifices maintain the universe. We are not insignificant. We are essential workers in the machinery of creation. Genesis offers a radically different view. Humanity is created in the image of God, not from the blood of a defeated rebel. We are given dominion over creation, not enslaved to maintain it. Genesis 1027 declares, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it." Humans are not servants. We are representatives, agents, stewards. We are given authority, not chains. Yet both narratives agree on one crucial point. Humanity is the solution to a problem in the divine realm. In the Enuma Elish, we solve the problem of divine labor. In Genesis, we solve the problem of who will govern and care for creation. Both stories give humanity cosmic significance. We are not accidents. We are not accidents. We are not afterthoughts. We are integral to the functioning of reality. Subscribe now to discover what else the ancient texts reveal about our true purpose. The Enuma Elish was not just a story the Babylonians told. It was a ritual text, recited every year during the Akitu festival, the Babylonian New Year. The recitation was performative. It did not just describe creation, it reenacted creation. By retelling the story, the priests symbolically renewed the cosmos, pushing back chaos for another year. The king played the role of Marduk, ritually defeating Tiamat and reaffirming his authority. The entire society participated in maintaining the order that Marduk established. This ritualization of the creation myth reveals something profound about the ancient worldview. Creation was not a one-time event in the distant past. It was an ongoing process that required constant maintenance. Every year, chaos threatened to return. Every year, the battle had to be fought again, at least symbolically. The cosmos was not a stable, self-sustaining machine. It was a fragile order held together by divine power and human cooperation. Modern science has, in some ways, vindicated this ancient intuition. The second law of thermodynamics states that entropy, disorder, always increases in a closed system. Order does not naturally sustain itself. It requires energy input. The universe is slowly winding down, moving from order toward chaos. The ancient Mesopotamians did not know about thermodynamics, but they understood intuitively that order is precarious and must be actively maintained. Christianity reframes this concept through the doctrine of providence. God does not just create the world and walk away. God sustains the world moment by moment. Colossians 1:17 says of Christ, "In him all things hold together." Hebrews 1:3 describes the Son as upholding the universe by the word of his power. Without God's continuous sustaining action, creation would collapse back into nothingness. The biblical God plays the role that the Mesopotamians assigned to ritual, constantly renewing and maintaining the cosmos. But the Enuma Elish contains another troubling element. The gods themselves are not eternal. They are born from primordial forces. Apsu and Tiamat existed before the gods. This means the gods are part of creation, not outside it. They are subject to forces beyond themselves. They can be killed, as Apsu and Tiamat were killed. They can be overthrown, as Marduk overthrew the older generation. Divinity is not absolute. It is contingent, achieved, maintained through power. This stands in stark contrast to biblical monotheism. The God of the Bible is not born. God is not part of a pantheon. God is not subject to any higher force. God simply is. Exodus 3:14 records God's self-revelation to Moses. I am WHO, I am. God is self-existent, eternal, unchanging. God does not come into being. God does not struggle for supremacy. God is the source of all being, the ground of existence itself. Yet the Enuma Elish asks a question that monotheism struggles to answer. If God is absolutely sovereign, why does evil exist? Why does chaos persist? Why must creation be sustained against the threat of collapse? The Mesopotamian answer is clear, because creation is inherently contested. Order is always opposed by chaos. The gods impose order, but chaos is never fully defeated. It is only held at bay. The biblical answer is more complex. God is sovereign, but God grants freedom to creatures. Angels can rebel, humans can sin. The world is damaged not because God is weak, but because God values freedom more than perfect control. Yet the Bible also promises that this is temporary. Revelation 21:1 envisions a new heaven and a new earth where chaos is finally and completely defeated. The sea was no more. The sea, symbol of chaos and the dwelling place of Leviathan, will cease to exist. Order will be absolute and eternal. But until that day, We live in a world where the echoes of the ancient battles still resound. We live in a world where chaos threatens, where order must be maintained, where the cosmic struggle continues. And the next revelation will show us who the warriors are in this ongoing conflict. Chapter 4. The Anunnaki Descend. Architects of a broken world. The term Anunnaki appears hundreds of times in Sumerian and Akkadian texts, yet its precise meaning remains debated. The word breaks down into Anunnaki, which can be translated as those of royal blood or princely offspring. Anu was the sky god, the highest deity in the Sumerian pantheon, so the Anunnaki are literally the children of heaven. Early texts describe them as a group of deities responsible for judging the fate of humanity, particularly the dead. They sit in the underworld, determining whether souls receive reward or punishment, but later texts expand their role significantly. By the time of the Akkadian Empire, the Anunnaki are described as gods who descended from heaven to earth to establish civilization. They are not abstract cosmic forces. They have specific assignments. Some oversee agriculture, some govern cities, some manage the underworld. They function as a divine bureaucracy, administering the cosmos according to the will of the greater gods. This is not the transcendent monotheism of later Judaism and Christianity. This is management. The Anunnaki are middle managers in the cosmic corporation. The Atrahasis epic provides crucial details. The text describes how the Igigi, lesser gods assigned to labor on earth, grew tired of their work. They rebelled, burning their tools and marching to the gate of Enlil, chief of the gods, demanding relief. Enlil is furious and wants to punish them, but Enki proposes an alternative: create humanity to take over the labor. The gods agree. The goddess Nintu mixes clay with the blood of a slain god, and from this mixture, the first humans are formed. This narrative places the Anunnaki in a managerial role. They are not the creators, they are the supervisors. Humanity is created to serve them, to free them from physical labor so they can focus on governing the cosmos. This is not benevolent. It is practical. The gods need workers. Humans are the solution, but the situation grows more complex. As humanity multiplies, we become noisy. The texts describe how human clamor disturbs the rest of the gods. Enlil complains that he cannot sleep because of the racket humanity makes. He decides to reduce the human population through plague, drought, and famine. Each time, Enki secretly helps humanity survive by teaching them how to appease the gods or find new resources. Finally, Enlil decrees a total solution, a flood to wipe out humanity entirely. Enki, defying the will of the other gods, warns Atrahasis. He instructs him to build a boat and save his family and representatives of all living creatures. The flood comes. Humanity is destroyed except for Atrahasis and those on the boat. When the gods realize what has happened, they are dismayed. They need humanity. Without humans to perform the sacrifices, the gods grow hungry. They are dependent on the very beings they tried to destroy. Comment below: why would divine beings need human sacrifices? This dependency reveals a profound vulnerability in the Mesopotamian divine order. The gods are not self-sufficient. They need humans as much as humans need them. This creates a symbiotic relationship, but also a tension. If humanity is destroyed, the gods suffer. But if humanity grows too large and too noisy, the gods are disturbed. The balance is delicate, and the Anunnaki are the ones tasked with maintaining it. Biblical parallels are striking but inverted. Genesis 6 describes how the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took as their wives any they chose. This sexual union between divine and human produces the Nephilim. God sees the resulting wickedness and declares, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. Then comes the flood, sparing only Noah and his family. Both traditions describe divine beings interacting with humanity in ways that lead to corruption. Both describe a flood as divine response, but the biblical account emphasizes human wickedness as the cause, while the Mesopotamian texts emphasize human noise. In Genesis, the problem is moral. In Atrahasis, the problem is practical. Yet both agree that the pre-flood world involved a dangerous mixing of the divine and human realms. The Anunnaki are often described as those who from heaven to earth came. This phrasing has sparked endless speculation, particularly among alternative historians who interpret it as evidence of ancient astronauts. While mainstream scholarship dismisses such theories, the language itself is unambiguous. The Anunnaki are described as descending from heaven to earth. They are not native to earth. They come from elsewhere. What does heaven mean in this context? In Sumerian cosmology, heaven is a physical place, the realm above the earth where the gods dwell. It is not a spiritual abstraction. It is the sky, but also something more. It is a parallel dimension overlapping with earth but distinct from it. The gods can move between these realms. Temples are built as portals, allowing communication and transit between heaven and earth. Genesis uses similar imagery. Jacob's dream in Genesis 28 shows a ladder stretching from earth to heaven with angels ascending and descending. Jacob declares, "This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." Temples and sacred spaces function as threshold points where the boundary between realms grows thin. The Anunnaki descend through these portals. They are not violating the cosmic order. They are using the infrastructure built into creation. Share this with someone exploring the connections between ancient texts and biblical truth. But why did the Anunnaki come to Earth? The Mesopotamian texts provide multiple answers. Some say they came to mine gold. Others say they came to establish order. Still others suggest they came to escape conflict in the divine realm. The texts are not consistent, which may reflect different traditions or different time periods, or it may reflect a more uncomfortable truth. The Anunnaki themselves had different motivations. They were not a unified group. They had factions, disagreements, conflicting agendas. Enki and Enlil, the two most prominent Anunnaki, are constantly at odds. Enlil values order, hierarchy, and obedience. Enki values wisdom, creativity, and compassion for humanity. When Enlil wants to destroy humanity, Enki protects us. When Enlil establishes strict rules, Enki finds loopholes. This conflict within the divine realm shapes human history. We are caught in the middle of a divine dispute, favored by one faction and opposed by another. This theme appears in biblical literature as well. Job describes a scene in the divine council where the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The term sons of God is the same phrase used in Genesis 6 for the beings who took human wives. They are members of the divine council, but they have different roles and perspectives. Satan functions as prosecutor, accusing humanity before God. The other sons of God have unspecified functions. But the scene reveals that heaven is not monolithic. There are debates, disagreements, different perspectives on how to handle humanity. The New Testament expands this concept. Ephesians 6:12 warns, "We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." These are not metaphors. They are described as real entities with real power. Paul is describing a cosmos populated by multiple layers of spiritual beings, some aligned with God and some opposed. The Anunnaki fit this framework. They are not the ultimate gods. They are subordinate divine beings, administrators of the cosmos, some faithful and some rebellious. The biblical authors would not have used the term Anunnaki, but they would have recognized the concept. The world is governed by spiritual powers, and those powers do not all agree on how the world should be run. One text in particular, the Era epic, describes a devastating conflict among the Anunnaki themselves. Era, god of plague and war, grows restless during a period of peace. He convinces Marduk to temporarily leave his throne, then unleashes chaos on Earth. Cities are destroyed, humanity suffers. The other gods finally intervene and restore order, but the damage is done. The text functions as an explanation for historical disasters, but it also reveals a cosmos where divine beings can act recklessly and humanity pays the price. This is a world where the gods are not perfectly good. They are powerful, but they are flawed. They make mistakes. They have emotions. They can be manipulated. And this makes the cosmos a dangerous place. If the beings governing reality are themselves unstable, then reality itself is unstable. The biblical response is clear. There is one God above all these powers. The Anunnaki, the sons of God, the cosmic authorities, all exist, but they are subordinate. Psalm 82 describes God standing in the divine council, judging the gods themselves. I said, "You are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men you shall die and fall like any prince." Even the divine beings are accountable. They are not ultimate. They can be judged. They can fall. And the greatest fall is yet to come. Chapter 5. The Kigalu and the hidden civilization beneath the surface world. The Sumerians described another realm. Kigal means great below or great earth, and it refers to the underworld, the land of the dead. But Sumerian texts describe more than just a waiting place for souls. They describe a functioning civilization in the depths, governed by its own laws, populated by its own inhabitants. The queen of this realm is Ereshkigal, sister of Inanna, goddess of love and war. Ereshkigal rules the Kigalu with absolute authority. No one enters or leaves without her permission. The most famous text about the underworld is Inanna's descent to the underworld. Inanna decides to visit her sister's realm, claiming she wants to attend the funeral rites of Gugalana, the bull of heaven. She adorns herself with all her divine regalia and approaches the gates of the underworld. The gatekeeper, following Ereshkigal's orders, allows her to enter only by passing through 7 gates, removing one piece of her divine power at each gate. By the time she reaches the throne room, she is naked and powerless. Ereshkigal judges Inanna and kills her, hanging her corpse on a hook. For 3 days and 3 nights, Inanna remains dead. The world above begins to die with her. Plants wither. Animals stop reproducing. Humanity loses all desire. Finally, Enki sends 2 beings he creates from the dirt under his fingernails to rescue her. They enter the underworld, charm Ereshkigal, and revive Inanna with the food and water of life. But there is a price. Someone must take Inanna's place in the underworld. She chooses her husband, Dumuzi, who failed to mourn her death. This myth is rich with meaning, but for our purposes, the key detail is the structure of the underworld. It is not chaos, it is highly organized. There are gates, there are gates, there are guardians, there are rules. The dead are judged and assigned places. The underworld is a mirror image of the world above, with its own hierarchy, its own administration, its own population. It is not a spiritual abstraction. It is described as a real place, beneath the earth, accessible through specific portals. The Kigalu are the inhabitants of this realm. The term can refer to the place or to the beings who live there. They are described as shades, weakened versions of their living selves, surviving on dust and clay. But the texts also hint at another class of Kigalu, beings who were never human, who have always inhabited the depths. These are the ancient ones, predating even the gods. They are the spirits of the earth itself, tied to the primal substance from which everything emerged. Like this video, if you are starting to see the pattern hidden in these ancient accounts. This concept of a hidden civilization beneath the earth appears across cultures. Greek mythology described Hades, the realm of the dead, but also Tartarus, a deeper prison for the Titans, the gods who ruled before Zeus. Norse mythology speaks of Helheim, the realm of the dead, but also of deeper places where primordial beings dwell. Hindu texts describe multiple underworlds populated by Nagas, serpent beings of great wisdom and power. The Bible contains references that fit this pattern. Numbers 16 records the rebellion of Korah against Moses. As judgment, the ground under them split apart, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, with their households and all the people who belonged to Korah and all their goods. So they and all that belonged to them went down alive into Sheol, and the earth closed over them. Sheol is the Hebrew term for the underworld, the place of the dead. But this passage describes it as a physical location beneath the earth, accessible through openings in the ground. Ezekiel 31 and 32 describe Sheol as a place of judgment where the mighty nations of earth are brought low. Pharaoh and his armies will lie among the uncircumcised, with those who are slain by the sword. The language is physical, not merely spiritual. The dead occupy space. They have locations. They are organized by nation and rank. This is not the Christian concept of heaven and hell. This is the ancient Near Eastern concept of the underworld as a realm beneath the earth. Jesus himself uses this imagery. In Matthew 12:40, he says, "For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." The phrase "heart of the earth" echoes the Sumerian concept of the underworld as the interior of the earth itself. After his death, Jesus descended to this place. 1 Peter 3:19 says he went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison, those who disobeyed long ago. What were these spirits? Where was this prison? Early Christian tradition, preserved in the Apostles' Creed, states that Jesus descended into hell between his death and resurrection. This is not the hell of eternal punishment. This is Hades, Sheol, the realm of the dead. Jesus entered the underworld, confronted the powers ruling there, and liberated the captives. He did what Inanna could not do. He descended and returned on his own power, not as a prisoner, but as a conqueror. Subscribe now for more connections between ancient myths and biblical revelation. But who are the beings inhabiting this underworld? The Sumerian texts describe them as ancient, predating humanity, possibly predating even the gods. They are described as watchers, observers, guardians of thresholds. They do not interfere with the world above unless summoned or unless someone intrudes into their realm. They are not evil in the moral sense. They are simply other. They belong to a different order of existence. This concept illuminates a difficult biblical passage. Genesis 6:4 mentions the Nephilim, then adds, "These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown." The phrase "men of old" could also be translated "men of the age" or "men from the ancient time." It suggests these beings predate the flood, possibly predate humanity. They are remnants of an older order, survivors of a previous age. Numbers 13:33 mentions the Nephilim again, encountered by the Israelite spies in Canaan. "And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim. And we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them." This passage places Nephilim after the flood, which contradicts the idea that they were all destroyed. Either some survived, or they were reborn somehow, or the term refers to multiple groups across different time periods. Ancient Jewish texts like 1 Enoch describe the Nephilim as the offspring of fallen angels and human women. When these giants died in the flood, their spirits became demons, wandering the earth and tormenting humanity. This explains how the Nephilim could appear both before and after the flood. The physical bodies died, but the spiritual essence remained, seeking new embodiment. The Sumerian texts offer a parallel. The Kigalu are described as spirits tied to the earth, unable to leave, unable to die. They are trapped in the underworld, but they can influence the world above through dreams, possession, and manipulation. Necromancers and mediums seek to contact them for forbidden knowledge, but this contact is dangerous. The Kigalu do not share human interests. They operate according to alien logic, pursuing agendas incomprehensible to mortals. Deuteronomy 18:10-11 strictly forbids such practices. "There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering. Anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens, or a sorcerer or a charmer, or a medium or a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead." Why such harsh prohibition? Because these practices open doors to realms that should remain closed. They invite beings from the underworld into the human sphere, disrupting the order that God established after the flood. The Kigalu represent the persistence of the pre-flood world. They are the memory that will not die, the ancient order that refuses to pass away. They dwell beneath the surface, waiting, and their influence seeps upward, corrupting human civilization, pulling us back toward the chaos that God judged and buried. But humanity was created for a purpose, and that purpose is about to be revealed. Chapter 6: Humanity's True Purpose. Tools of Cosmic Balance. Why do humans exist? The Mesopotamian answer is blunt: to serve the gods, but the texts reveal something more complex beneath the surface. The Atrahasis epic describes humanity created from the blood of a rebellious god mixed with clay. This is not a purely physical creation. Humanity carries divine essence, the blood of Wailu, the god who instigated rebellion. We are formed from defiance. Rebellion is literally in our DNA, or in the ancient equivalent. We are created to serve, but we carry within us the spark of those who refuse to serve. This creates a tension at the heart of human existence. We are meant to maintain order, to perform the rituals, to sustain the cosmos through our labor. But we are also descended from disorder, from rebellion, from the refusal to accept the hierarchy imposed by the greater gods. This tension is not a flaw. It is the design. Humanity is meant to balance opposing forces. We are the mediators, the bridge between heaven and earth, between order and chaos, between submission and freedom. Genesis offers a different origin, but a similar function. Humanity is created in the image of God, given dominion over creation. Genesis 1:26 records God saying, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." We are representatives of God, agents authorized to govern creation on God's behalf. But Genesis 2 adds complexity. God places Adam in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. The Hebrew word for keep is shamar, which means to guard, to protect, to watch over. Adam is not just a gardener. He is a guardian. He is protecting the garden from something. From what? The serpent enters in Genesis 3, suggesting there are hostile forces present even in paradise. Humanity's role is to stand between the sacred space of God's presence and the chaos beyond, maintaining the boundary. This is the same role the Mesopotamian texts assigned to humanity. We are boundary keepers. We maintain the separation between order and chaos. When we perform this role faithfully, creation flourishes. When we fail, chaos seeps in and reality begins to collapse. Share this with someone who needs to understand their true purpose in the cosmic story. Psalm 8 expands this vision. What is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? Yet you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor. You have given him dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet. Humanity is placed just below the divine beings, the sons of God, the angels. We are part of the cosmic hierarchy, assigned a specific role, given authority and responsibility. But we are also vulnerable. We are a little lower than the heavenly beings. We do not have their power, their knowledge, their permanence. We are mortal. We are limited. We can be deceived. We can be corrupted. And this vulnerability is precisely what makes us useful for the task we are given. We are strong enough to govern creation, but weak enough to need God. We have authority, but we must exercise it in dependence on the one who gave it. The fall in Genesis 3 is not primarily about disobedience. It is about humanity attempting to transcend our assigned role. The serpent promises, "You will be like God, knowing good and evil." Eve sees that the fruit is to be desired to make one wise, and she takes it. The temptation is not to become evil. It is to become divine, to cross the boundary we were meant to guard. And in crossing that boundary, we lose our position. We are expelled from Eden. We can no longer function as intermediaries because we have abandoned our assigned place in the order. The Mesopotamian texts describe a similar problem. Humanity multiplies and grows noisy. We disturb the gods. Enuma wants to destroy us. Why? Because we are not content with our role. We want more. We want to be like the gods. The Tower of Babel story in Genesis 11 captures this perfectly. Humanity builds a tower with its top in the heavens, attempting to reach the divine realm by force. God scatters humanity and confuses our languages, preventing us from uniting in rebellion. Both traditions recognize the same danger. Humanity is most useful when we accept our limits. When we try to transcend those limits, we become a threat to the cosmic order. This is not divine jealousy. This is practical necessity. If humans gain divine power without divine wisdom, the result is catastrophe. We lack the maturity, the perspective, the selflessness to wield such power responsibly. But the texts also hint at a deeper purpose. Humanity is not meant to remain subordinate forever. We are meant to grow. The Mesopotamian kings, especially in later periods, are described as becoming divine after death. They ascend to join the gods. They are rewarded for faithful service by being elevated beyond human limits. Similarly, biblical texts describe humans who transcend death. Enoch is taken to heaven without dying. Elijah ascends in a whirlwind. Moses' body is hidden by God, suggesting he too was taken rather than simply buried. The New Testament makes this explicit. Romans 8:29 says believers are predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. 1:4 speaks of becoming partakers of the divine nature. 1 Corinthians 6:3 asks, "Do you not know that we are to judge angels? Humanity is being prepared for a higher role. We are not meant to remain a little lower than the angels forever. We are destined to surpass them." Like this video if you are beginning to understand your true destiny. But this transformation requires a process. Humanity cannot leap directly from mortality to divinity. We must be refined, tested, purified. The experiences of life, including suffering, are part of this preparation. We are being trained for cosmic governance. The struggles we face now are teaching us the wisdom and compassion necessary to wield divine authority responsibly. This reframes the entire human experience. Life is not random. History is not meaningless. We are not cosmic accidents. We are participants in a grand project, the restoration and transformation of creation. The Mesopotamian texts see this as maintaining the existing order. The biblical texts see it as moving toward a new order, a transformed creation where humanity plays a central, elevated role. Revelation 21 describes the final state, a new heaven and a new earth. The new Jerusalem descends from heaven to earth. God dwells with humanity. There is no more temple because God's presence fills everything, and humanity is described as ruling alongside Christ. Revelation 22:5 says, "And they will reign forever and ever, not as subordinates, as co-rulers, as partners in cosmic governance." This is the destiny hinted at in Genesis 1, obscured by the fall, partially restored through redemption, and fully realized in the age to come. Humanity is meant to be the bridge between heaven and earth, the union of divine and material, the point where God's presence and physical creation meet and merge. We are the solution to the separation of heaven and earth. We are the healing of the cosmic wound. But to understand how this is possible, we must examine the codes that govern reality itself. Chapter 7. The Me, Sacred Codes that Governed Reality. The Sumerian concept of the Me is one of the most fascinating and least understood elements of their worldview. The Me are not laws in the legal sense. They are not moral principles. They are something more fundamental. They are the underlying structures of reality, the divine attributes and powers that make civilization, culture, and even existence itself possible. Modern scholars struggle to translate the term. Some call them divine decrees, others call them cosmic principles. Still others describe them as cultural norms with ontological status. None of these translations fully capture the concept. The Me govern everything. There are Me for kingship, for priesthood, for warfare, for music, for sexuality, for truth, for descending into the underworld, for ascending to heaven. There are Me for emotions like fear and joy. There are Me for crafts like metalworking and weaving. There are Me for abstract concepts like judgment and mercy. The Sumerian texts list over 100 distinct Me, and the lists are probably incomplete. The Me are the operating system of reality, the code that makes the universe run. The most important text about the Me is Inanna and Enki. In this story, Inanna travels to Eridu, the city of Enki, god of wisdom. Enki greets her with a feast and drinks heavily. In his intoxicated state, he begins giving Inanna the me, one by one. She accepts them all and loads them onto her boat to take back to her city, Uruk. When Enki sobers up, he realizes what he has done and sends his servants to retrieve the May. But Inanna escapes, and the May are successfully transferred to Uruk, making it a great city. This story reveals several crucial points. First, the me are transferable. They are not abstract concepts. They are treated as objects that can be moved from one place to another. Second, the me are concentrated in specific locations. Eridu possesses them originally because it is the first city, founded by Enki himself. Third, the distribution of the May determines the success and character of civilizations. Uruk becomes great because Inanna brings the May there. Fourth, and most importantly, the May agrees list independently of the gods. Enki possesses them, but he can lose them. Inanna can take them. They are not generated by divine will. They are discovered, accessed, controlled, but not created. This suggests the me are more fundamental than the gods themselves. They are the substrate of reality, existing before creation, providing the template from which the gods organize the cosmos. Comment below. If divine codes govern reality, what does that mean for free will? This concept has profound implications. If the me exist prior to the gods, then the gods themselves are subject to something higher. They are not ultimate. They work within constraints. They organize reality according to patterns they did not invent. This undermines the absolute sovereignty of the gods. It suggests a structure to the universe that even divine beings must obey. Biblical theology wrestles with a similar issue. Plato's Euthyphro dilemma asks, is something good because God commands it, or does God command it because it is good? If the former, then goodness is arbitrary, dependent solely on divine will. If the latter, then goodness exists independently of God, and God is subject to it. Christian theology has traditionally responded by arguing that goodness is neither arbitrary nor external to God. Instead, goodness is grounded in God's nature. God commands what is good because God is good. God's character is the standard. The May function similarly in Sumerian thought. They are not arbitrary, they are not external to the divine realm. They are the structure of divinity itself, the attributes and powers that make the gods who they are. Enki possesses the May because he is wise, but his wisdom is defined by the May. Inanna becomes powerful by acquiring the May, but the May themselves define what power is. The relationship is circular, or perhaps more accurately, the me and the divine nature are two aspects of the same reality. Proverbs 8 personifies wisdom as a figure who existed before creation. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up at the first before the beginning of the earth. Wisdom is not created. Wisdom is there from the beginning, present with God, participating in the act of creation. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, then I was beside him, like a master workman. This is strikingly similar to the Sumerian concept of the me. Wisdom is not an abstract principle. Wisdom is a presence, an active participant in organizing reality. The me of wisdom exists before the world and shapes how the world is made. The same could be said for justice, mercy, truth, beauty. These are not just ideas. They are real, powerful, foundational. They are the me. John 1 takes this concept further. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. The Word, the Logos, is the organizing principle of reality. The Logos is not separate from God. The Logos is God. Yet the Logos is also distinct enough to be spoken of as with God. This paradox mirrors the Sumerian concept of the May as both part of the divine nature and distinct enough to be transferred and controlled. Subscribe for more insights connecting ancient wisdom with biblical revelation. The practical function of the May in Sumerian society was profound. Kings claimed to possess the May of kingship. legitimizing their rule. Priests claimed the may of priesthood, authorizing their rituals. Cities competed to demonstrate they possessed the most important may, proving their superiority. The may were not just theological abstractions, they were political tools, cultural capital, sources of real power. This is why Inanna's theft of the may is so significant. She is redistributing power, reshaping the cosmic hierarchy. Uruk rises because it now possesses what Eridu once monopolized. Civilization shifts, balance changes, and the gods themselves must adapt to the new configuration. The Bible describes something similar in Acts 2. Peter explains this as the fulfillment of Joel's prophecy, "I will pour out my spirit on all flesh." The spirit, the presence and power of God, is being redistributed. It is no longer confined to prophets and kings. It is now available to all believers. The me of prophecy, the me of divine presence, the me of spiritual authority are being transferred from a select few to the entire community. This is revolutionary. It democratizes access to divine power. It breaks the monopoly of religious elites. It suggests that the structure of reality is being reorganized, that the cosmic order is shifting. And this shift is intentional, orchestrated by God, moving toward a future where all of creation participates fully in the divine life. But the me also contain danger. If they can be stolen, if they can be misused, then access to the mess must be carefully controlled. The Mesopotamian gods understood this. They guarded the mess to those who tried to access them without authorization. The story of Adam and Eve can be read in this light. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents a me, a divine attribute that humanity is not yet ready to possess. Eating the fruit is stealing the me, attempting to access divine power prematurely. The result is expulsion from Eden, separation from the source of life, but the punishment is also protective. Humanity with premature access to the me of good and evil would be dangerous to itself and to creation. The separation is a quarantine, giving humanity time to mature before accessing the full range of divine attributes. Revelation 2:17 promises, "To the one who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone, with a new name written on the stone that no one knows except the one who receives it." The new name represents a me, a divine attribute granted to the believer. But it is given, not stolen. It is received as a reward, not taken by force. And it is unique to each individual, customized to their specific calling and character. This is the ultimate destiny of humanity. Not to remain separate from the me, but to receive them legitimately, to become bearers of divine attributes, to embody the structure of reality itself. We are being prepared to become living me, walking manifestations of divine principles. And when that transformation is complete, creation itself will be transformed. But before that day comes, there is judgment to face. And that judgment is revealed in the flood. Chapter 8, the deluge, Eridu, and the rebellion of heaven. Every ancient culture remembers the flood. The details vary, but the structure remains consistent. Humanity becomes corrupt. Divine judgment comes as a deluge. One righteous man survives by building a boat, and civilization begins again. The Sumerian version, recorded in the Eridu Genesis, describes how the gods create humans, establish cities, and appoint kings. But humanity multiplies and becomes noisy. Enlil, disturbed by the clamor, convinces the other gods to destroy humanity with a flood. Enki, who favors humans, warns Zazudra, the king of Shuruppak, to build a boat. The flood comes, lasting 7 days and 7 nights. When the waters recede, Zazudra offers sacrifices, and the gods grant him eternal life, placing him in Dilmun, the Sumerian paradise. The Akkadian version, the Atrahasis epic, provides more detail. The gods swear an oath not to warn humanity. But Enki, clever as always, speaks to the wall of Atrahasis' house, technically keeping the oath while still conveying the warning. Atrahasis builds the boat, seals it with pitch, loads his family and animals, and survives. The gods, realizing they have destroyed the workforce that sustains them, regret their decision. They agree to allow humanity to survive but impose new limits: increased infant mortality, barrenness for some women, and demon-caused miscarriages to control population growth. The biblical account in Genesis 6-9 shares the same structure but shifts the emphasis. God sees that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The cause is not noise but moral corruption. God instructs Noah to build an ark. The flood lasts 40 days and 40 nights, with the waters prevailing for 150 days total. Noah sends out birds to test if the land has dried. Finally, God makes a covenant never to destroy the earth by flood again, sealing it with a rainbow. Like this video if you see how all these accounts point to the same historical event. The consistency across cultures is remarkable. Mesopotamian, Hebrew, Greek, Indian, Chinese, and Native American traditions all preserve flood stories. Skeptics argue this is simply because floods are common and traumatic, so cultures naturally develop such myths, but the specifics are too consistent. A global flood, divine judgment, one family saved, a boat, animals preserved, a new beginning. These are not generic flood memories. They are memories of the same event, filtered through different cultural lenses. Geology provides intriguing evidence. The Black Sea deluge hypothesis suggests that around 5600 BC, rising Mediterranean waters breached the Bosphorus Strait, flooding the Black Sea basin catastrophically. Settlements that had existed on the shore were inundated. Survivors would have fled, carrying the memory of the disaster. This regional flood could have been experienced as global by the people who lived through it, especially if their entire known world was submerged. But the Mesopotamian and biblical texts describe more than a natural disaster. They describe judgment. The flood is not random, it is intentional, directed, purposeful. It is a response to corruption, and not just human corruption. Genesis 6 describes the sons of God taking human wives, producing the Nephilim. This mixing of divine and human is presented as a key factor in the decision to flood the earth. The pre-flood world was not just wicked, it was ontologically compromised. The boundaries between heaven and earth had broken down. The Mesopotamian texts hint at the same issue. The Apkallu, the seven sages, brought knowledge to humanity before the flood. After the flood, they do not return. Their role is taken by human sages, wise men descended from the original seven, but lacking their divine nature. The direct presence of divine beings among humans has been withdrawn. A barrier has been erected. Heaven and earth are now more separate than they were before. This is the purpose of the flood, not just punishment, but reset. The pre-flood world had become unstable. The mixing of divine and human, the proliferation of forbidden knowledge, the presence of hybrid beings like the Nephilim, all of this threatened the cosmic order. The flood was not only destructive, it was cleansing. It removed the contamination and allowed creation to start again under new rules. Eridu plays a central role in this story. According to the Sumerian king list, Eridu is the first city, the place where kingship descended from heaven. It is the city of Enki, god of wisdom, the place where the Me was stored, the portal connecting heaven and earth. Eridu is not just the oldest city. It is the template for all cities, the prototype of civilization itself. Archaeological evidence supports this. The site of Eridu in southern Iraq shows continuous occupation from the Ubaid period, around 5400 BC, through the early Sumerian period. The earliest structures are simple shrines, rebuilt and expanded over centuries, eventually becoming massive temple complexes. The continuity suggests Eridu maintained its sacred status for millennia. This is where civilization began. This is where the gods first made contact with humanity. But Eridu is also associated with the flood. The Eridu Genesis describes how the city existed before the deluge and was re-established afterward. Enki's temple, the Iabzu, the house of the cosmic waters, sits above the Abzu itself, the subterranean freshwater ocean. This is the source of life, but also the source of the flood. When the boundaries fail, when the waters above and the waters below are no longer held in check, the Abzu rises and the sky opens and the world is drowned. Genesis uses similar imagery. Genesis 7:11 states, "All the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened." The flood comes from both above and below. The structure of creation, established in Genesis 1 when God separated the waters, is reversed. The boundaries collapse. Creation returns to chaos. Only the ark, a floating microcosm of order, survives. Share this revelation with others searching for the truth hidden in ancient texts. But the flood also reveals a deeper rebellion. Why would divine beings descend to earth and corrupt humanity in the first place? What were they trying to accomplish? The Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text, not included in most biblical canons but quoted in Jude, provides an answer. The Watchers, angels assigned to observe humanity, rebelled against God. They desired human women and descended to Mount Hermon, where they swore an oath to carry out their plan together. They took wives, taught forbidden knowledge, and fathered the Nephilim. Their motivation was not lust alone. They wanted to corrupt the human bloodline. If humanity could be mixed with angelic essence, then humanity would no longer be purely human. The promise in Genesis 3:15 that the seed of the woman would crush the serpent's head would be nullified. There would be no pure human line through which the Messiah could come. This was a strategic strike against God's plan of redemption. The flood was God's countermove. By wiping out the corrupted population and preserving only Noah's family, God ensured the survival of a pure human line. Genesis 6:9 emphasizes that Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. The word blameless in Hebrew is tamim, which can mean morally upright but also physically unblemished. Noah's genealogy was uncorrupted. His line was purely human. Through him, the promise could continue. But the Nephilim reappear after the flood. Numbers 13:33 describes them in Canaan. How is this possible if the flood destroyed them? Several explanations exist. Some argue the flood was regional, not global, and Nephilim survived in areas not covered by water. Others suggest fallen angels resumed their activities after the flood, producing a new generation of Nephilim. Still others propose that the Nephilim spirits, being hybrid beings, did not die fully, but became disembodied demons, seeking to possess and corrupt humanity in new ways. The conquest of Canaan seen in this light is not merely a land dispute. It is the continuation of the conflict begun before the flood. The Israelites are commanded to completely destroy certain Canaanite populations, including the Anakim, descendants of the Nephilim. This is not genocide for its own sake. It is the removal of ontologically corrupted populations that threaten the purity of the human line. It is a surgical strike against the remnants of the pre-flood rebellion. The rebellion of heaven did not end with the flood. It was contained, limited, pushed back, but not fully defeated. The cosmic war continues. The powers and principalities that Paul describes in Ephesians are the same forces that rebelled before the flood. They have been judged, their ultimate fate sealed, but they still operate within the limits God allows. They still seek to corrupt, deceive, and destroy humanity. But the final chapter has already been written. Revelation 20 describes the ultimate defeat of these powers. Satan and his angels are thrown into the lake of fire. The old heaven and earth pass away. A new creation emerges, one where the separation between heaven and earth is finally healed, not through illicit mixing but through the legitimate union of God's presence with redeemed creation. The New Jerusalem descends. God dwells with humanity. The project that began in Eden, interrupted by rebellion and flood, is finally completed. We are living in the in-between time. The flood has reset the world, but the final restoration has not yet come. We are participants in the ongoing conflict, choosing sides, shaping the outcome by our faithfulness or compromise. The story of the Sumerian kings, the Anunnaki, the Akkadu, the May, the flood, all of it is our story. It is the backstory of the world we inhabit, the hidden history that explains why reality is the way it is. And now that we know, we cannot unknow. We cannot return to the comfortable ignorance of thinking history is simple and the world is straightforward. We have seen the depth, the complexity, the strangeness of our origins. We have glimpsed the cosmic conflict playing out behind the scenes, and we must choose how to respond. Comment below with your biggest takeaway from this journey through hidden history. Subscribe for more biblical mysteries revealed. Share this with someone ready to see the truth. The story is not over, and your part in it is just beginning.